we now come to our last talk of this symposium, and it is by Bregje Gerritse, our researcher here at the Van Gogh Museum. Bregje curated the exhibitions The Potato Eaters, Mistake or Masterpiece, in 2021, and Van Gogh and the Avant-Garde, Along the Seine. And this is the exhibition that is now in Chicago at the Art Institute and will come to our museum in October. And I very much recommend that you will come back to see it then. Bregje also contributed to the exhibition and publication On the Verge of Insanity, Van Gogh and His Illness. We've heard this title before. And Bregje is currently a PhD candidate at the University of Amsterdam. And her research topic is the reception of Vincent van Gogh in Paris. And she will speak on this topic today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me today and for allowing me to end this beautiful morning. As Nienke just told you, I'm currently working on my PhD, which has the preliminary title, The Reception of Vincent van Gogh in Paris, 1886-1914, Art Dealers, Collectors, Critics, and Contemporary Artists. I'm not at all finished yet, and we have quite limited time today, so I thought it would be interesting to focus on the very beginnings of Van Gogh's artistic reputation, which happened in France and very specifically in Paris. After just 3 months in his beautiful newfound environment of Auvers-sur-Oise, Van Gogh died on the 29th of July, 1890. During the last months of his life, it had seemed to Van Gogh that as a painter he was a failure. I feel that that's the fate I'm accepting and which won't change anymore. In reality, this was not the case. He had already received recognition from his peers. The Dutchman, by that time, had gathered an important circle of colleagues, friends, and admirers. No fewer than 50 letters of condolence were received by his brother Theo and the Van Gogh family, of which the majority were sent from France, 11 by artists, including such names as Monet, Pissarro, Toulouse-Lautrec, Guillaumin, and Coste, 3 by art critics, 2 letters from collectors, and a letter from an art dealer. Van Gogh's death did not go unnoticed by the press either. 7 short articles on the subject were published in regional and Parisian newspapers. The widely read La Petite Presse praised him as one of the most interesting of our Impressionist painters. These words of appreciation demonstrate that Van Gogh already enjoyed a small but secure reputation in artistic circles. It simply took time to build a reputation, and he'd been only trying to carve out a place for himself among the Parisian avant-garde since the winter of 1886-87. Prior to 1888, Van Gogh's art could be seen at his brother Theo's Paris apartment and the shop run by paint seller Julien Pertanguy. That year, he participated for the first time in an official group exhibition, the Salon des Indépendants, which immediately caught the eye of like-minded painters and critics. The critic Gustave Kahn, for instance, wrote that Monsieur Van Gogh paints large landscapes vigorously and with little concern for the value or precision of their tones. Van Gogh also took part in the 1889 and 1890 exhibitions of the Indépendants, drawing by far the most press coverage of any of the foreign exhibitors. The breakthrough in the French press came in January 1890 when the poet and critic Albert Aurier wrote his article Les Isolés, Vincent van Gogh. Aurier certainly touched a nerve. Van Gogh, he wrote, was a great painter and a terrible and desperate genius, but he will only ever be fully understood by his brothers, the most artistic of artists, and by a few fortunate members of the common people. That same month, Van Gogh took part in the annual exhibition of the Association Les Vins, the Brussels equivalent of the Indépendants. Although it's somewhat of a modernist myth that this resulted in the first sale of his work, it was the first substantial sale. The Belgian painter Anna Boch purchased his red vineyard at Les Vins for no less than 400 francs. And yesterday, an exciting exhibition opened in Ostend entitled Anna Boch Voyage Impressionniste. of which the second venue will open in the Musée Pont-Aven from February 2024 for those who wish to see it in either of the venues. And the researchers of this exhibition uncovered an unpublished letter from Anna Boch to her brother Eugène from February 1890, in which she wrote about the vineyard that it would look good in the corner of a living room. They also uncovered the fact that the second painting that she bought in 1891, just 1 year later, Peach Trees in Blossom, now at the Courtauld, for 350 francs, features in a painting of her interior from 1892, showing her admiration for Van Gogh. So, as far as others were concerned, Van Gogh was by no means a failure. Several critics had already spotted him as an exceptional artist with an entirely personal style. His reputation was growing within a small yet important circle, and not only in France. Now, let's take a look at what happened when he passed away. After Vincent died, his brother Theo, stricken with grief, put all of his effort into bringing his late brother's work to the attention of dealers and critics to steadily build his reputation. He began making plans just a few days after the funeral for an Exposition Vincent, a large-scale exhibition in a rented space where people would be able to see numerous works together in order to attract the attention of the press. Theo approached dealer Paul Durand-Ruel to explore the possibilities for an event of this kind at his gallery on the Rue Lafitte. The dealer came to Theo's home in the week of the 19th of August to view Vincent's work, but hesitated. Theo also invited art critic Aurier to come and dine with him and his wife Jo Bonge at the beginning of September, on which occasion they discussed the possibility of Aurier writing a biography. Theo decided to lend his brother's letters from Saint-Rémy to the writer in preparation for this biography. And this would have also been the moment, no doubt, when Aurier acquired most of his collection of Van Gogh paintings. He owned 12. It is highly plausible that he received many of these works from Theo as an advance or as a thank you for his assistance. Around the same time, the critic Julien Leclerc published a brief obituary of Van Gogh in the Mercure de France. He wrote, and I quote, "He will perhaps have his due hour of fame before being ranked among the rare, bold and personal artists of this fin de siècle." Leclerc also announced in his article that there was to be an exhibition of the painter's most important works, indicating that he was aware of Theo's plans. In the end, Durand-Ruel did not go ahead with the solo exhibition for Van Gogh, so Theo decided to set it up in his own new apartment, which was still vacant, as an exhibition space from the 22nd of September. The apartment walls were hung so full of paintings that, according to his friend and fellow artist Émile Bernard, the various rooms looked like the galleries in an art museum. Bernard helped install the works, and Vincent's ideas about exhibiting art were respected, with paintings displayed side by side with others that intensified their colours. The exhibition quickly enjoyed a certain success. Theo managed to sell 2 works to Emile Schulfenecker, a close acquaintance of Vincent and Theo. Attention was clearly growing as Tanguy also sold 2 paintings a few months later. Works by Van Gogh were on constant display in his modest paint shop at the time, as Aurier repeatedly pointed out to readers of his monthly column in the Mercure de France. So it all seemed to be going quite well until this point, until something happened. Theo continued to search for an official venue for the Exposition Vincent, but he himself started to show the first signs of a severe nervous breakdown. He collapsed on the 9th of October and was hospitalized and eventually transferred to a clinic in Utrecht. Bernard did not give up, even though the most important representative of Vincent's artistic legacy was no longer there. In December 1890, he arranged for 3 Van Goghs from Aurier's collection to be included in the group exhibition Peintres impressionnistes et symbolistes at the Barque de Bouteville Art Gallery. Theo died on the 25th of January 1896 1891, 6 months after his brother. Not only was Gogh now a single parent responsible for a child less than a year old, she also had to take care of Theo's own collection and of Vincent's paintings. She swiftly understood that this was not merely a physical legacy, but required her to continue the brothers' shared mission to build Vincent's reputation as a painter. Having failed to get Aurier to write about Van Gogh, Bernard himself published 2 texts about his friend in 1891, in Les Hommes d'Aujourd'hui and La Plume. At the beginning of March that year, he and the group of friends continued the efforts to get the Exposition Vincent off the ground, hoping to get a more official location to show his paintings than Theo's apartment. All the friends will get to work. Schufenecker, Fauché, Daniel, Denis, Tanguy, Redon, and I. In the press, it will be Huysmans and Mirbeau. He asked Gogh, who had moved back to the Netherlands, to leave Van Gogh's work in Paris for a while longer and not to lend them to another, in his view, rival exhibition. Unfortunately, he too was unable to find a venue, and Gogh, contrary to his request, submitted 10 works to the Salon des Indépendants, which opened on the 20th of March. It turned out to be a sound strategic move. Van Gogh's work was mentioned in at least 6 articles, including an extensive piece on the front of the L'Écho de Paris. And I quote, "It's immensely sad to think that this painter, so magnificently talented, that this artist, so thrilling, so instinctive, so visionary, is no more." The collection of paintings in the apartment in Paris was relocated to Gogh's new Dutch address in April. Plans for a major retrospective in Paris were now shelved for the time being. While 4 exhibitions were devoted to Van Gogh in the Netherlands in the course of the following year, Bernard finally managed to organize a modest solo presentation in Paris of works that were still in France. 16 works were exhibited at Le Bac de Bouteville in April 1892, including a version of La Berceuse which belonged to Bernard. The critic at La Vie Moderne was enthusiastic. Van Gogh was inspired, he wrote, and he praised not only the paintings but the drawings too, and I quote, "Let anyone who mocks him go to Le Bac. They will be forced to admit that many a serious artist would be incapable of producing in pen and ink landscapes like the ones exhibited there." Aurier suddenly died in October from an infection, while he had studied Van Gogh and seemed the ideal person to write his biography. The publication never got off the ground. Bernard had meanwhile conceived the idea of publishing Van Gogh's letters. In early 1893, he managed to present a series of them in the Mercure de France, the literary magazine, complete with illustrations, including reproductions of the letter sketches and a self-portrait of Van Gogh. Gogh's brother paid for the reproductions, and Bernard wrote an article to introduce the letters. The series continued until August 1897. As far as I'm aware, no Van Gogh exhibitions were held in Paris in 1893 or 1894. Only at Le Bac de Bouteville was a work on display, namely the self-portrait with bandaged ear, which was included in the exhibition Les Portraits du Prochain Siècle. It resulted in a publication where Van Gogh's portrait was reproduced along Rodin's and Cézanne's. When Tanguy died in 1894, after a short illness, the location in Paris where Van Gogh's work had been continuously displayed also disappeared. Following his death, the art dealer Ambroise Vollard picked up the baton, organizing his first Van Gogh exhibition in 1895. While it did not result in any sales, it did elicit a ringing endorsement in La Revue Blanche, which cited those famous sunflowers so colourful and unaffected. From that moment until the early 20th century, Vollard became the leading dealer for Van Gogh's work in Paris. So, in conclusion, Van Gogh died at the very moment that after 10 years as an artist, interest in his work had started to grow, and he was beginning to receive recognition in artistic circles. Theo committed himself to building his reputation further. But, as fate would have it, though, he and several others of Vincent's advocates would all die in the space of several years. Yet, despite all these setbacks, Van Gogh's reputation was steadily growing in the first years after his death. Bernard, and above all Jo, saw to it that his paintings were shown at various exhibitions, which meant that the painter was still written about from time to time. Of course, these are just the very early beginnings of his reputation that I've just shared, but nonetheless, I hope it was interesting, and I'm very excited to share more of this in the future.